Part two of the discussion, y'all. Took me a while, having some Wi-Fi issues on my end, but no worries, no worries. I am trying to get my peoples back up in here. Let's see. All right, we got all three of our peeps in here. I'm sending the
Hello, hello.
All right, that's one, that's two, and that's three. Thank you, Lord. Oh my
All
God.
right. We're
Ah,
back.
oh,
Zuck
it
tried to
worked.
shut us down,
Ah,
but we just kept rising,
I
baby.
was having Wi-Fi issues and it wouldn't
And the
come back
people is
up.
coming right back too. Look at that, man. We
All
already
right,
got four.
thank you, everybody.
All right, now
So
Praysha, go on.
yeah, so I was in the middle of a thought, but then I thought of a question that I think I want to ask instead. For the atheists in the room. Um, the question I thought of was, as atheists, would you say that um I would assume that the idea of faith in any higher being um is off the table, should not happen, you guys don't believe in that. But I kind of separate that out from faith in general, like just the concept of faith, like hope and faith.
Mm.
So I kind of wanted to ask you guys about that. Would you, as atheists, what are your views, on, um, you know, faith, or in terms of like hope, and then which then I think the next level after hope would be having faith. It'd be like confident hope in something.
Actually, that's actually a good segue into a talking point that I wanted to bring in on how to improve this conversation. I'll share my thoughts on that in a bit, but defining words. Both parties should definitely agree on a definition because the term faith has so many different meanings. Now, the word as I understand it in the religious context is, you believe in your deity without evidence. That's what I think of faith. Just a blind belief. But also, faith can be a hope. Faith can be confidence, right? So, I guess my personal thought on that. Colloquially, sure. I usually say, yeah, I got faith in them, you know. But I'm just saying that is in like, yeah, like obvious, but it's still based on something. You know what I'm saying? Like I can say that I have faith that Jordan Burroughs will win a wrestling medal. I know that because of his stats. I know that because he's an amazing. Like I don't know anything. But I'm saying that based on what I know about him. You know what I mean? Whereas like faith in the religious sense is more like I'm just gonna believe it. Fuck it. I don't give a shit what y'all say. I don't give a fuck about what the history. You know what I mean? Like so. But yeah, but faith in a general term, I don't have a problem with it. But we do have to define what we mean.
Huh. So that's an interesting question, Prisha. Can you can you can you be a little more specific about what you mean when you say hope? Hope in like
Yeah, I'm
in what
separating out
context?
those two terms. I'm mainly asking about faith. I just brought up hope to kind of describe what I meant by asking you,
Mm-hmm.
about faith. That to me, I brought up hope to say I look at hope as being, one level of just hopefulness. I hope this happens. And it might be, I kind of look at what Marcus was describing as religious faith, as he put it. I kind of look at that as more so hopefulness if you're not basing it on anything at all. But I love how you described faith in general, Marcus, in terms of it being based on stuff, even though you don't know like the outcome, but you have faith in it based on what you know, kind of thing.
All right.
I kind of look at that as faith. Also, I think that's applicable. I would say in a faith-based sense. Now, I also should probably say, as
You
from my
see
own
this faith.
perspective, I look at religion as separate from faith. But um,
Interesting.
so but going back to your question, Madison, I was just bringing up hope I was trying to formulate my question in a way that you guys can understand it,
So
but maybe.
you're asking, so let me make sure I understand what you're asking. You're asking, does faith play a role at all in our lives with given the fact that we don't believe in deities?
Yeah, what are your views on faith in general? If not faith in a religious sense or in deities, yeah.
So, um, I think that's a hard question to answer. I think for me, faith, the definition of it sort of just means belief in something, even if you don't have evidence for it. I mean, that's sort of what faith means. And and frankly, as a just really brief aside, which is exactly why atheists don't believe, because there really isn't any evidence for deities. And that's exactly how it's supposed to be, because in Christianity, you're supposed to have faith. If you had evidence, you wouldn't need faith. So I guess what I'm saying is, for me, uh, I call myself, I'm an atheist, but I also call myself a rationalist. And what I mean by that is that, I sort of reject any non-evidentiary sets of beliefs that aren't that are non-evidentiary. I reject them all. So whether it's an organized religion, or whether it's quote unquote spirituality, which nobody seems to be able to define, and
Right.
or whether it's Buddhism or voodoo or indigenous religions, belief systems, if they're non-evidentiary, I don't embrace them as um, spiritual or religious beliefs, faith-based things like that.
So
Do I
so
have do I have
oh,
faith
go
in,
ahead.
do I have faith in certain things? I don't know. I'm not sure. Outside of superstitious beliefs and things like that, when we talk about faith, I just think it's a hard word to describe outside of that context, right? Because we don't really use it outside of that context very much in society, do we?
I mean, well, as I said before, as far as like, I have faith that he'll win that wrestling match. Like, it's like I said, it's more so just like, oh, I just know his build, I guess. But that's more like I'm saying I'm confident that I have a
Right.
confidence that he'll do it.
Yeah.
Which I guess in your personal vocabulary, you'll probably just say, oh, I'm confident. You wouldn't say faith. And
Right.
right, okay.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't say, like, so in my political work, right? I have to uh, sort of make predictions about how certain things will go if we do certain strategic things. If I create a strategy for a candidate and a candidate does, I have to sort of predict, or do my best to predict, how those strategic choices will affect the campaign, the candidate, the voters, the perceptions. Um, I wouldn't call it faith. I would call it, you know, data gathering
Yeah.
and trying to make decisions and predictions based upon past experiences and other data and things like that. But at the end, it sort of looks like faith, right? If I do these things, then this will happen. And I
Right.
believe that this is good. I mean, that's what I'll tell the candidate. Listen, I think if we do this, this will happen. So, I mean, yeah, maybe it is a sort of faith, a type of faith, but it's not really faith. I feel, like I said,
Right.
for me, faith really means something that I'm believing in without any other,
Like with no
objective
rationale
evidence. Yeah,
to
with
it.
no
Yeah.
objective evidence. It's not evidentiary, and that's the way it's supposed to be, at least in the
You know,
religious sense.
I was gonna say I like the examples you both gave in related to that, which made me think. maybe that's another thing, that another word that we should, try to come to an agreement on the meaning of is evidence.
Right.
You
I
know,
was thinking about that too. Uh, or was it Madison? You said something just now. You said like objective evidence. I guess that should be what you focused on, the difference between evidence and objective evidence. Like, because, there are Christians, shoot, I'll even say in my Christ, level of Christianity, I'd say I quote unquote have evidence of my faith, but that's what I feel, but my evidence is what I feel God has done for me. You
Right.
know what I mean? Or what God has done on behalf of my family,
Right.
Right.
or the prayers I've given. But some people will use that as evidence, and you can see why. You know what I mean? Like, I would say that. You know what I mean? Like, if somebody asked me why I believe in God, I'd be like, I'd give them a list.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess it would be important if you're having the debate. Circle back to that point we were making earlier. If you're having a debate, I guess the point, I guess the proper term I'd say would be objective evidence, because what I was given was subjective evidence. It's subjective to me.
Right. And just to piggyback off that a bit, and that's another thing I wish theists could kind of understand. Like, when y'all when I and I'm using the generic y'all, like when y'all say if you think of this evidence, right, for your particular God, think about it and just ask yourself, can I use this argument for Krishna? Can I use this argument for, you know, Amaterasu? Could I use this argument for Hercules? You know what I mean? If the answer is yes, don't say it. All right, because I'm gonna get mad at you, and I'm gonna be like, fucking well, like
well, I
that's
think you,
you
well,
know,
I think to what you guys are talking about though, when you talk about objective evidence, and when we're talking about the the supernatural, right? Um, I think I need a definition on objective evidence there, because there's been plenty of secular scientific studies surrounding prayer, surrounding supernatural healing,
I know the one about
surrounding,
prayer you're talking about. By the way, I'm familiar with that
surrounding
one.
different religions, not just Christianity.
And look, and
Well,
well, I'll
What are
ask you
y'all
for an
thinking though?
example, but a lot of people of different religions will say, you'll hear a Hindu person, oh yeah, science backs up the Mahabharata. You know what I mean? Like they'll say that too. And but I guess give an example, I guess, if you can.
So I can pull one up if you want me to pull up,
I mean,
you know.
this is like a
But I'm sure
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
saying,
Oh,
you are
yeah.
you telling me you've never seen any, scientific research done around
I've seen the prayer
supernatural?
study, but I just know how it ended. But
Tell
but
me about that, because you might know more than I do about it.
okay,
What do you think?
so it was like I think it was like the American Heart Association. They did that study, and basically it was like basically like they had like a group of patients who knew they were being prayed for, a group of patients who were being prayed for but they didn't know it, and then just that placebo group. It turns out that prayer did jack shit, according like at the end of the day. So yeah,
Oh, yeah, I
I
would.
think it's so that to me that's a great study, I guess. But we all also know scientifically that placebo effect is real, right? So and this is why they have the placebo group. But if you believe in prayer and you know people are praying for you, I mean, the mind is very powerful. We're still learning about the mind. So to me, this is not objective evidence because there's lots of prayers that go unanswered, right? So when I say objective evidence, I guess what I mean is something that's not subject to how I'm feeling. I'm
right,
Brandon. I'm exactly like I said. When I was a believer, I was very serious. Um, I would have given a very, very long list of things that I believe were surefire indicators of the existence of God and his movement and presence in my life.
And go
And of
ahead.
the Holy Spirit in me. Um, just more examples, more and more examples than I could list. What happened eventually was that I just sort of asked myself if I was, um, were these really examples or were they coincidences? And, I mean, everybody is a little different, but I mean, I had to admit that there wasn't really anything unique about me,
Right.
or those experiences, and that they happened to people who did not share my belief system. So
I was just
I
about to
guess
mention that.
I think for me, objective means something that's not subject to interpretation. Like objective evidence to me of God. Like if I told you that I was Jesus Christ, what would you require? What evidence would you require of me to prove it?
I
You
mean, I'd
understand
fill
what
up
I
the
mean?
bathtub and
Like
tell you to walk on it.
that's what I'm saying. You see what I'm saying? Like these are the types of things that I'm talking about. If I made a claim to be God, or if I made a claim to be Jesus Christ, you wouldn't believe me. You'd be like, "Nah, you're not." And if I insisted that I was, I'm sure you could produce a list of things that would say, "All right, well, you do this, and I might believe you."
Right.
Right? That's what I mean when I say objective evidence. The sun coming up in the morning is not objective evidence. We have other explanations for why the sun is visible in the morning. We have other explanations for why people uh, who believe they're being prayed for and happen to be believers uh, seem to have better outcomes. Um, we have we have other explanations for all of those things. When I am
But
looking for
those people actually did
evidence,
worse in that study.
oh, did they?
Yeah, that's what I
Well,
mean. Prayer did jack shit. Like,
so so when I say objective evidence, I guess for me, I'm talking about evidence that is for which there is no other explanation, and we're talking about supernatural things. So if it's supernatural, then it's supernatural. It's not something that can be explained naturally.
Right.
And
Right.
so if someone is making a supernatural claim, then I want to see evidence of
Right.
it that is supernatural.
Right. I like that you said that. I have a quick question. I don't know if anyone here can answer it, but it did make me think, when it comes to other scientific phenomenons, and I call it scientific phenomenons when like I think about things like, and I don't know that much about science, let me say that first, but I'm thinking about things like quantum physics or I don't know, black holes or I don't know, things that are, considered they haven't been fully explained, but it made me wonder um on the most I don't want to say supernatural level, but on the most uh difficult to explain level when it comes to science. Um are what are the ways that they in science like okay, maybe this goes back to theories like or
oh
to
Lord, oh, that's another
yeah,
word that needs to be
I know that's a
defined.
trigger word. I don't mean to trigger
Cause
anybody.
holy shit, man.
But I did think about the Big Bang Theory, which is, as my understanding, is a theory. So, but things like that. I mean, when it comes to science and explanations, and I think from our previous conversation, Marcus, what I took away from that conversation was that I think atheists have a problem with is that faith-based people or theists are saying, I am choosing to believe this based on the evidence I have, and it seems like it can't change drastically, whether it means change to atheism or change to another religion, unless you're like what Brandon was talking about. Sure, a lot of people look at it that way. You can change to whatever religion. But um, I don't want to lose my question. My question was about, I guess I think for things on a scientific level, it sounds like you guys are receptive to the kinds of evidence that's available for
I
certain things that we don't have
absolutely, and
full
I'll tell
evidence
you
for.
something, Prussia. I'm receptive to the belief in deities. I am absolutely receptive to believing in deities or anything supernatural. I just need to see evidence. I am not opposed to, I am not one of these people that says, I mean, I don't believe in gods. I don't believe in supernatural occurrences. But I'm not close to the possibility that they could exist. I just need evidence before I choose to believe them. And with respect to some of these very, very high level scientific things like quantum physics, I am absolutely a fan of those things. And I'll tell you what, we have so much to learn. There is a lot going on that we don't know, that we haven't been able to quantify yet. There's so much going on. I wouldn't call myself a futurist, but I am a little bit of a futurist. It's an interest category for me, and I do think there's absolutely a lot of stuff going on that we have not yet discovered yet. The thing I like about science is that it's not fixed. It's not locked in, right? If we discover something and we can replicate it, I mean, through the process of discovery, we ask a question, we form a hypothesis, we conduct testing, and then we come up with more information. And we can change what we believe or what we know based upon the evidence that we've been able to gather. I do think that we have, as humans, done an amazing job so far, but I feel like there's a lot more that we don't know than that we do.
Right.
And I won't be around when they figure out how to tap into the multiverses,
Right, I know,
or
right?
or how to communicate with those other beings from a galaxy that we haven't discovered yet. Um, I won't be around when that happens, but I do believe that these are things that we have the capacity for,
Right.
um, through science and through, the system of inquiry and the demand for evidence. You see, the demand for evidence is the foundation of all of this. Otherwise, people could just be like, "Well, there's aliens," and there are a lot of people who do that, right? There's just, and they believe it, but we don't have evidence for it right now. So I appreciate that we have this system where we do demand
Right.
evidence for things. I think that's important.
And there's some, was it, was it, I don't know, I don't know if I'm kind of in the minority on this, but there are some Christians who have a bit of that too. Like, I was not by my mom. My mom is more hardline than I am, but the older I got in Christianity, I was kind of brought into the school of thought amongst some Christians that, like, the first like 11 books of the Bible aren't supposed to be read as history. They're supposed to be read as figurative history. You know what I mean? And as a history major, I took a biblical history class, and I know that most of those 11 books aren't straight up history. You know what I mean? Now
I
that
mean,
that
of course not. But
right, right.
what
No,
the
no, but
fact
like
I'm
the first
sorry, I'm being
11
an
books, like
asshole.
we would refer to them as figurative history. You know what I mean? As more like, yeah, they're supposed to be figurative, And so I do think that there is room for that in Christianity too, in the sense of we don't, I mean, we do require some sort of evidence for certain parts of the Bible. Like, like most of us know that Abraham didn't live to be 900 years old. Like, like, but like,
Nobody did.
right, you know what I mean? But like, you know, but that is a school of thought that is getting bigger, I'd say, within the church too. And since we've been talking about science, I think another thing with the whole discourse amongst atheists in theists, I'd say that should be focused on is that uh, again, this is just from the encounters I've had with some atheists in my life that religious people aren't open to scientific, fact and stuff you know, like there's a lot of people who like hear I'm a Christian and think that I don't believe in evolution. I 100% believe in evolution. I just believe that God caused it. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people get this hard line like in the sand that they think that if you believe in God that you automatically think that God just went click and the world came on. Like that's not like
Some of them believe that though,
but I don't deny that some of them
especially
believe
the
that though.
GOP.
Right. No, I don't deny that some of them believe that. You know what I mean? I definitely like that's not a thing I deny. I just think that it
But
kind
they're
of it
they're
kind
the
of
loudest
sours.
voices in the room, though. I guess that's the issue. But go
Right,
ahead.
right. That's the problem. And the people like me could be more vocal in going after those people. But also, I think it sours discourse when you will get, again, I won't say that all atheists are like this, but it does sour discourse when some of them will like assume that we all think that way. The same reason why I wouldn't confuse all atheists, I don't think you should confuse all theists as being this like, you know, I don't know, these like backwards people who just straight up turn their brain off, I guess. I don't know. I could have
Well, I
articulated that
kind of
better.
want to ask a question, I guess to all of you. I was going to say to what Brandon said about, because while in some senses I would agree that there's some figurative history going on, like I've learned about the, the idea that, well, maybe if God created the earth in 7 days, who knows how long days is actually representing, or
Right.
I've never heard what you just said, though. That was going to be my question about um, Abraham not living for 900 years. What do you mean by that? I've never heard that.
Uh, well, this is main. This was mainly cemented by my like studies in school and everything. But I had some people who kind of would tell me about this too, in terms of like how Abraham, the the jury is still out on whether Abraham actually existed from a historical and archaeological standpoint. Like this isn't me talking as a Christian. There's still no quantitative proof that he existed, but there's also not 100% concrete proof that he didn't exist. So, but I think most of like the historical and archaeological community can come to an agreement in the sense of even if he did exist, there's no record that he would have lived to like as old as he was in the Bible. I don't.
I mean,
I always confuse this.
especially
Like,
since the average lifespan was like what, way lower than that back then. So,
Well, yeah, well, I would say to what, you guys are talking about that um I was going to say to what Madison was saying about, the hopefulness within scientific study, futurist thinking, field of thought. I mean, I would wonder what if I think I'm trying to remember the statement she made, and I see that her feed is in and out, so I'm hoping we don't lose her in the
right?
middle of me
Yeah,
talking.
yeah.
I'm worried about that. Uh,
Um, but there was a statement that she made about um, yeah, we did lose her.
Yikes.
Um,
See if I can get her back.
about their, I'm trying to remember it while we're trying to get her back in, but she said something about there being so much more. What did
Sorry
it?
about that.
No,
Can you
it's
hear
not.
us?
I think it's me. I don't know what's going on, but it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna refer to something you said, Madison. I was trying to actually remember how you worded it, but you were basically talking about just how much there is to look forward to. There's so much to explore, I think is the word you use. There's so much more for us to learn when it comes to inquiry and scientific study. And I was thinking, Oh, that's what it was. You were also saying within, you love the idea, you love about science that it's not in a box, and that there's so much more to explore. And it's not set in stone, I think is the word you use. So, but I was thinking, what if I told you that, to some degree, I don't feel like I'm in a minority yet. But sometimes I wonder if the way that I think will be a minority, even within uh, religious or theist circles, in terms of, you know, I, to me, the idea of um, there being a God is one that makes it, uh, makes there so much more for us to learn, always, even like this conversation between me and Brandon about um, whether or not Abraham lived for that long or not. Because to me, the exciting thing becomes, what if he did live for that long? And that's not an indictment. That's not a close, because yes, it's written in the Bible, I guess is or I guess if you want to look at other religious texts and say, well, those are things that people are saying are set in stone. I think people are set in stone. I think people limit ourselves, and um and I think they do that as a self-preservation thing. I think, kind of like you said before, Madison, that self-preservation, I think you said something about this, but I think self-preservation or like defensiveness, causes people to delineate things, make decisions about things, and then they just don't move. They're not willing to hear other sides. They're not willing to be in the same space with people who disagree with them. Um, I don't think God is that way. Even though, yes, we know the traditional view of, God and sin, right? But in my views about faith and about a higher being and who he is, even the idea of him being a he, right? I got that from the Bible. But is it possible that he could be a he and not be misogynistic or not be,
Oh,
is it possible that those
uh,
two things can happen at the same time? And so,
I mean, uh,
again, I think we limit ourselves on
Right.
what
Well, I
possible.
think
But
I think that I think that there is a foundational difference though. As you said, it sounded like what you were saying was, the cool thing about science is that as we discover more things, we may actually discover, for example, that there was an Abraham and that he lived 900 years or whatever, right? Because we'll have more access to advanced things in science. But there's one problem with that. Um, if science discovers, and this is sort of where we are now, and this is why things are sort of starting to get complicated, at least in
man,
America.
okay.
Um, if science discovers that, for example, the flood never happened, and there's no geological evidence for such an
yeah, I don't know what's going on.
Hey, that DMV internet, boy.
Let's see if we can. I'm hoping it's
But
not gonna kick her out again.
like one minor little point I want to make, Brandon. Now you said about there's no evidence there's no evidence proving that Abraham didn't exist.
Right.
I
Well,
mean,
in
I
my
mean,
classes,
no, no,
they
no, no, no. I just want to say, like, just to that, like, that logic is like, I mean, you can't prove a negative. You know what I'm saying? Like technically, like people haven't proved that pixies didn't exist. You know what I mean? But anyway, Madison's back.
Yeah. So the the the,
I
the,
think that
the
goes to what
difference
Madison was about to say.
the
Hmm.
difference between science and faith is that if, and this is why we're starting to get into the territory where there's this conflict between faith people and science people. If the science comes back and says, well, there's no evidence, for example, of a worldwide flood, people of faith will not believe that. They will not accept that because it conflicts with what they already believe and they're not willing to change their beliefs. Science, on the other hand, is exactly the opposite, right? If the evidence can be, if we can gather, if we can form a hypothesis, create testing, replicate the test, and form a theory, then we will change what we believe. That's the difference. So that that is a foundational difference, and it's contributing to an anti-science bias on the part of evangelical Christians in the United States, and it's creating a rift because the farther along we get in science, the more some of these types of non-evidentiary things uh, become less become shown to be not really what we had originally thought. And the question at that point becomes, if you're a person of faith, do I accept the science or don't I?
Uh, this is
Uh,
this isn't really like this is really a negative to what you said. This is more of a question, I guess. Uh, could that be? I don't know. What if you don't really have confidence in the person's the team, I guess, performing the test? You know what I
well,
mean? Like if you look at
right,
their like I listen, I'm not a master historian, so I'm not gonna say that, but I could look at somebody else's work and maybe point out stuff that might not be right. Like the
right,
stuff I read in my classes against the that against the existence of, let's say, Abraham, right? If I looked at some of his work or anything and I saw that either he didn't read a document right or he mistranslated something,
right.
does that mean I'm rejecting science, or does that mean I just have a problem
Well,
with the way the test was done?
because usually theories are not formed with one test and one team. It's usually cumulative, and there is such a thing as a peer review process. And
No, I
so,
know.
as a historian, if somebody wants to present something like that, a geologist or whatever their discipline is, I mean, I would expect that there be a rigorous peer review process, and those findings need to ideally be replicated, right? So we're not just talking about one person coming out of the woods and saying, okay, this is a thing. That's a good place to start the study, and
Right,
it's a good place to begin the inquiries and for more people to be able to pick up and do more research and do more
right,
study. I think that that's really important.
right,
I don't think that anybody should just take something for
right.
at face value, and I think
I
that
think
that's true for religious beliefs as it
right.
is for science.
I think the issue, though, and this isn't even a religious or atheist issue, it's more of a societal issue. I think because we live in the age of social media, the problem is that shit's already out there. You know what I mean? Like, for instance, I'm not, Marcus, I know you mentioned the importance of using the you and y'all in terms of like the collective and not
Yeah.
like so I'm gonna use that here.
Okay.
All right, so the issue could be that somebody puts out that shit about how like they didn't like they proved once and for all that the flood didn't happen. Now I'd say most of the people in this room and most of the people listening, I'd hope at least we'd have the presence of mind to wait for more evidence. The problem is, unfortunately, in the age of social media and where we live at now, a person of the atheist belief could take that and then like thousands of you know people like that person could share it all and all and all to the point that they don't wait for the follow-up peer review. It
But
just goes like it just and that and like I said, that's not really a religious or
hey, man,
uh
decent.
yeah, that's not a religious or atheism issue. That's a societal issue. But I think unfortunately stuff like that causes people to dig in the trenches further. Because then you'll get a religious person who will dig in and go, well, I don't believe it. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Right.
Like, yeah,
Well, I think
I
to
mean,
Mandisa's point, I mean, not Mandisa, to Madison's point, um, you know, I think I guess to what you're talking about, the issue, I think the real issue is not so much that, while it's true that people will do like what you're talking about, Brandon, but I think it's what Marcus you said earlier, while Madison was off, your internet wasn't working, and he mentioned, I think, a really good point that if the goal is to prove the non-existence of something, and especially something supernatural, you know, how do you find scientific evidence for that? We're having a hard enough time talking about evidence for it being existent.
right.
And so I see your point, Madison, that okay, if we find scientific evidence that helps our point, will theists believe it or not? And I think that broadens out our discussion to a more if we step back and take a more universal, I guess you could say, look at what we're talking about. You know, now we're not just talking about um, evidence of something existing or not. Now we're talking about making a decision on that evidence. And now if we can't rely on peer reviewed or the majority view or history to help us make these types of decisions, what we think about ourselves and our existence, right? I mean, can we at least go back to our personal experience of, okay, I was born into this world. I don't have any recollection of what my existence was before I was born, and I don't have any foresight into what will happen after I die. Like, I'm living on this earth for a certain amount of years, and that's what's putting the pressure on me to think about these things. That's the only reason why this matters to me, you know, is the fact that I'm living. um, and I think that's kind of where we can all maybe, I don't know, like you see what I'm just gonna, I don't know what else to say after that, but I just kind of am thinking, you know, this conversation took a shift to me when Marcus said that.
yeah, you can't prove a negative. Like you can't prove that leprechauns don't exist. I heard them. It's weird when my internet goes out, I can hear you guys. I just can't see you.
Oh,
It's
okay.
really weird. Yeah, you can't prove that leprechauns don't exist. You can't really prove a negative. Um, but to allude to something that we talked about a little earlier is, sometimes belief and identity go pretty closely hand in hand. We literally have people running around right now that believe the earth is flat.
Shit.
And they very, very deeply believe that. There is no evidence that the earth is flat. Every single scientific discipline contributes to the theory that the earth is spherical.
Right.
I mean, there is no evidence that the earth is flat. And if you accepted that premise, you'd have to throw out physics. You'd have to throw out just like every scientific discipline would have to be thrown out of the window and start over because nothing works anymore, right? But they still believe it. They still believe it. And the question becomes why? Why is that? And so, to draw, and I think I agree with you, Pressure. It's a human condition. People attach an identity to something. I mean, I don't know how we got to the flat earthers. I don't know how we got here. I don't know how we got here. I don't know how we got here. But but here we are, right? How does that even happen? But here we are. Um, so the question becomes, if you were to have overwhelming evidence of something, there's still no guarantee that people will adopt or change their belief systems. And I think that the more identified you are with those belief systems, the less likely you are to adjust your belief regardless of evidence.
And you know, that kind of adds to like my frustration a bit when it comes, to this conversation. And it's like, but I mean, I've learned now that I learned to accept that atheists and theists have just two different epistemologies. But like going back to disproving the flood, I mean, it's like there's plenty of fields of science that will say it's not just geology. I mean, meteorology says it's impossible. Like zoology says the flood is bullshit. You know what I mean? Like there's like so many fields. And I used to just think to myself, like, okay, I think this theist is fucking with me. Like they're clearly being dishonest with me right now. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, like, obviously that's not y'all's intentions to be dishonest per se, but it's like, I mean, like, I just had to just learn to accept, like, some people's epistemology is like, I'm gonna just hope that that happened like that. Whereas people like me and Madison, it's like, well, okay, there's no evidence for it. We'll just move on. Let's see what else we can find out. So that's all I want to say.
Yeah, I don't know if we're bringing this conversation to a close now, because it kind of sounds like we're, I don't know if you guys feel that way, but I think, we've it based on everything I've heard, it sounds like a well-rounded discussion around the fundamental differences, but then also, like Madison said, the human condition that we all share of just having very identity-based views. And um, I guess I go back to what I said at the beginning of the call, that in order to improve these kinds of discussions, I think we do have to view each other that way, regardless of um, regardless of our assumptions. And I would actually say too that even if you have been in one camp or the other, if you were an atheist who then becomes a theist, or a theist who became an atheist, to still recognize that while the person you're talking to may have a view that came from a majority viewpoint, their individual reasons for why they believe that, or their individual journey to coming to that way of thinking, is still unique from you, and those two things can exist in the same space at the same time. Those are my thoughts.
Yeah, yeah, lived experiences definitely contributes to one's
Right.
personal belief and how they think about things as well. So,
Right. Yeah, no, was it? I guess that is, because I'll be honest, I don't know when they plan on giving me that 2 minute warning. So, I guess, yeah, Pressure, you kind of gave your summarizing thoughts. I guess Madison, Marcus, and myself could kind of give ours. I guess I could go first in terms of, it was very enlightening, hearing about, uh, I guess, kind of the marginalization that you guys feel. And I guess it's something that I will definitely reflect on when I am presented with certain people in the future. Because truth be told, again, I guess, I did have the blinders as a Christian to being like, well, this shit don't matter. You know what I mean? Like I kind of just threw it out my hand because I never had to think about it, whereas you guys do have to think about it. And so I guess my takeaway would just be more of respect and understanding in terms of these future conversations, respecting people's personalities while also understanding how those personalities are crafted. I don't know which one of the two of you want to go next.
Madison, you want to go?
Well, I mean, this has been an amazing and a beautiful discussion. I mean, it really has. And so I want to thank you, Marcus and Brandon, for hosting this and pulling it together. Pressure has been amazing connecting with you, meeting you. And this has been a really a great discussion. Did not devolve into anything stupid, and I'm really grateful for that. And I do think that I learned some things today, and I think that I can take away and chew on a little bit, think about. And I hope that other people have heard things that they can take away as well. This is a great discussion, and I just want to say thank you for hosting it, and thanks for having me.
Well, no
For sure,
problem.
for sure.
And I like to say, well, thank you to Praysha, thank you Madison for both agreeing to come on, and thank you Brandon for coming on last minute, man. 6 man tag in, and as Madison said, I'm glad that this does not dissolve into a shit show. And Brandon, I mean, I always knew you was like liberal in the faith, but I was actually surprised that to see you like actually give credence to actual like historical evidence. Most Christians will definitely be like, that's the world talking. But yeah, but I'm glad we were able to understand each other, and as I said before, I had to learn to understand to be more patient with the fact that religious people just have a different epistemology. I mean, I had to fight my way out of indoctrination to even develop the evidence base and uh, epistemology. You know what I'm saying? And lots of times, people who are faith based, they may think that we're being closed minded simply because we're evidence based and simply because we're familiar with the talking points. But yeah, but basically, I do. But honestly, what just happened though? We came off with seeds planted in our minds and a new understanding. I mean, I have a new understanding of my brother. He's my brother. I didn't even know that, right? So yeah, I'm glad this conversation happened, and more of these should happen, no matter what the reasoning is. Whether, like Praysha said, um, to try to convert or to try to persuade out of, or just to have a understanding in general. I mean, these conversations should happen. They should be out in the open, just so people can understand that black atheists exist, and also that there are Christians out there who are willing to open their minds up, to open their ears up, and hear them out. And there are Christians out there who are a safe space for us, and hopefully we get more allies with the theists, and maybe have theists help us get into office so we can fight the GOP together. Okay, you don't want a fucking theocracy with people who actually believe that. Okay, let me stop. Anyway, thanks for coming
Yeah.
on.
Praysha, Madison, I don't think I said thank you, but definitely thank you for coming out. I want to thank everybody who stuck around with us for the
Woo,
conversation. And
for epic two-parter.
I know I started with Kirk Franklin, and that was
You
that
gotta
was
play
wrong
three
of
six
me.
mafia now.
No, I got to play something in the middle.
You
We
gotta
got
play that
Jesus
triple
Walks.
six.
It's Jesus Walks by Kanye West. We got just enough Jesus in
Man,
us for us, but Kanye West.
hey,
Is,
hey.
y'all
Kanye
can claim
Kanye
Kanye West.
converted Marilyn Manson, so who knows? Maybe Jesus is real.
Hey,
Shit.
there was a time where y'all could claim Kanye. All right, we can both claim Kanye. We got it on deep trust. All right, y'all.
All right, you guys. Thank you guys for having
Thank
me on. Thank you for
you.
hosting.
All right, y'all.
Thank you guys. Nice to meet you.
Yep. All right,
Uh,
y'all. Oh, Marcus, what's that? All right, y'all. That was the SOS podcast. Thank y'all for coming out. We do this every Wednesday at 8. Come through. We have interviews, and then we do chill free sometimes. Come for that too. All right. Cool. Thank y'all. Peace. What's the time? Coming late.